AI to Go podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the AI to Go podcast. My name is Johannes and we help you turn AI pilots into clear business outcomes. Today's guest is Larissa Schneider. She's the COO and co-founder of Unframe AI, the managed AI delivery platform. We'll get into what that means in a bit. Welcome, Larissa. Where are you recording the podcast from today? I know that you are traveling a lot.
Traveling a lot, but today from my home office in Berlin, your former home as well. Huh?
Nice. So how's the weather in Berlin like in February?
Well, it was nice. It snowed again today. Literally, I have not experienced a winter like this in my lifetime. I think we've had so much snow for such a long time. It's been insane.
Well, Berlin in the summer is beautiful, but the winter is really tough, right?
Yeah. But look, spent last couple of weeks on the road, so a little bit of California sunshine in the mix was nice.
You have a very international background, right? You also studied international marketing and management, and you worked across different countries and cultures. How has that global experience influenced the way you think about leading a team and a company in the light speed AI age?
Interesting one. I think overall, I've always had this mindset, actually, since joining the tech world, that you want to hire the best people, because what brings you further as a company is the people that make up that company, right? And like, I'm never a fan of artificially putting people in a place if they don't need to be. Of course, if you're looking after a customer, it's very helpful if you are close to the customer. But if you're working mostly on your own or even within a team, but the team is operating 24/7, or you're mostly working on bigger projects, like hire the best people you can get no matter where they are, because ultimately everyone's kind of staring at their computer for most parts of their workday anyway. So that's definitely helped us. But I think it also has a lot of appreciation for our customers, because at Unframe we work purely with large enterprise customers that have global teams, and they have a lot of different challenges, not only on the tech stack, but local regulation and cultures and the coverage that they need as a customer of ours. I think it helps when you have lived that before, that you can apply it and better understand their environments.
I see. How do you build the company DNA in a remote first setting?
It depends a little bit on the team. So we have quite a few sites at this stage. So we have a big R&D hub that is based out of Tel Aviv in Israel, and there's a pretty big office. Most of the people are there in the office every day. We also have somewhat of an office in the US, but most of our teams there are very customer focused. So the fewer hours they spend in the office and the more they're spending with their customers, the better, I would say. So we always push that. And then we have an office in Berlin as well, which we use more as like a meeting point, as a hub to get together and work on projects rather than for the day to day.
If I ask your 8-year-old self, 8-year-old Larissa, whether she'd one day co-found an AI company, what would she say and what would surprise her about where you are today?
Interesting one. Absolutely no chance that would have been on my mind, neither on my family's mind, I would say. You know how people in Germany like grow up. You're in the countryside somewhere. All of my family's background is in farms. Everyone had a farm, like I grew up with cows in the countryside. Like it's never like the fun kid. I was never like, honestly, to this day, I don't think I've ever really watched more than 2 Disney movies or anything like that, which is crazy for everyone. I already like to play Office. That was my favorite game when I was little, and like to staple papers.
That's
Thankfully,
fun.
we've moved away from the paper era at this stage, so I don't need to do that in my day-to-day anymore. But that was, honestly, that was my kind of fun. There was a moment where I wanted to be a private detective, and I guess in a way that kind of fits with some of the tasks that you do in business. So it did make sense to a certain degree, but it was not the clear path that I had to put in front of myself.
So interesting. Yeah, I also grew up on the countryside and did not plan to end up in tech far away from home. You navigated infrastructure, security, and now AI, and you mentioned that you're kind of a detective. What's one experience in your career that permanently changed how you see big organizations?
Interesting. I don't have like a single point, I think, but I guess that would start with me for my time at Nutanix. When I joined there, I was just finishing my studies in San Francisco, wanted to join a startup in the Valley. And so I moved down there for a while and get onboarded. Ultimately, they were looking to open an office in Europe and moved me to Berlin. So that's how I ended up back in my home country after like 10 plus years abroad. But in the end, what they were selling was infrastructure, right? It was not like the most innovative thing, but it was really like a strategic decision. it's innovative in its own rights, but like for the business user that ultimately will use technology, the app layer is really what's interesting for them, right? Hardly anyone in the company will be like, oh, I'd rather have this server versus that server. Like that's really like a decision that very few in a company do. But the way that you frame it and the way that you talk about the value that really boring, and sorry for anyone who's listening who spent a lot of time at Nutanix with me, but like that really boring server in the end and like the boxes underneath, you can do some really cool stuff there if you show the value, if you take it a few levels higher and look at it from a strategic level. And kind of the whole digital transformation was the big buzzword that we talked about when I worked there. And that was in everyone's mind, like moving to the cloud. But how? But what about my super highly sensitive workloads? Where do they live? Do they move to the cloud? Do they stay on-prem? Is there a mixed world? All of that was very early at that moment and really had the whole company's visibility. And I think somehow we are at that stage with AI, where it's like, what is still like a traditional ERP workflow? Maybe what is something that we can completely reinvent with AI? Like the similar conversations are happening. It's just a different time, a decade later or so, and slightly different topic, but it's very similar and definitely both has that high level CIO and board level visibility.
Absolutely. Working in telecommunications, I know how that feels. So it's a very abstract infrastructure layer. And how do you make that tangible, right? And how do you come up with the right use cases for the right customers? That's kind of the challenge in which you're operating then from the security infrastructure kind of perspective.
Absolutely.
You are not a research scientist. You're a go-to-market and execution powerhouse. What do you understand about AI adoption that AI researchers and technologists tend to miss?
Somehow, I believe it's very black and white, if you ask me, because ultimately what it comes down to is like everyone in this world right now has pressure to adopt AI, right? Like that's a given. Like there's hardly ever a board meeting where an executive isn't asked, what is our AI strategy? How can we set apart from everyone else? That's a fact, right? There are ultimately probably two ways that you can approach things. Either you approach it from like a technical perspective and be like, oh, there are all these great shiny toys out in the market. Let's see what we can do with that and kind of try to artificially find a home in your organization. Like, let's see if we can use this. And if it works, we might license it. Or you can approach it the other way around, where it's like you actually have pain points. You do have a roadmap probably or a list of use cases that you want to work on, like real priorities for your business. And in this stage, I would argue that everyone should wonder, do I use AI to solve this problem? Or do I do it any other way, which you can do the old school way? But in most cases, at least looking at AI probably makes a lot of sense. And that's usually the best way of doing it, I believe, which is why every single project we start with a customer or any engagement we kick off, we will always start with the business case first and do like a proper ROI analysis. Like, we are able to solve this pain point for you. What does that actually mean for your business? And help them also like justify the project in-house, which is super important. So just because there's fancy toys doesn't mean it's the best fit for your business right that moment. Might be down the line or in other parts of the business, but actually see that it moves the needle for you and act that way.
Now, many enterprises and businesses are still stuck in the pilot purgatory. When you see that, what's usually the real root cause behind the scenes from your own perspective?
Yeah, I think we really started seeing that about a year ago when like the quick DIY motion happened, when all of those app generators, quick promptu app type of solutions came out there and everyone started playing with it, right? So it was like more of a bottoms up approach, and you had all of your employees like figuring out, what can I do, which apps can I build, what workflows can I automate, but not really always taking into consideration enterprise governance and security aspects, or even how do I integrate that? If it's so easy for me in one or two lines to generate a whole new system to use in the business, but my actual data sits in SAP. We all know what an SAP integration would mean for you. Like, that's just not something that works. And so in the meanwhile, what we're seeing a lot, those people have moved into different roles, or they have abandoned the project, or they have left the company altogether. And you're left with like hundreds, if not thousands, of deprecated agents that are running around or that are or just like taking up wall space. So initially, that's kind of a reoccurring theme that many people, like I think it's great to try, like have your people be interested, but in production and especially down the line, like the governance, the maintenance aspect is often forgotten and creates a lot of problems after the fact.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When you're building the business case, one of the key aspects is build versus buy, right? When is building your own AI stack genuinely smart, and when is it more like an expensive ego project?
So I always have this example, when you are talking to a large automotive customer, right? Like
Pick
take
one.
your pick, whichever one, it doesn't matter. But they probably have amazing, really talented, extremely expensive AI developers in-house, probably the best of the breed. They came to join that company to build a self-driving car, right? Like that is ultimately what they want to achieve. Now, your current pain point within your team might be that your HR tickets are not routed, or that I know your warehouse doesn't have enough parts and needs like email reminders. That's not really what you want to spend these people's resources on. It's way too expensive, and you want their brain power to create your core IP. So I would always say anything that sets you apart significantly from competition, that is your IP, that is what you're ultimately selling, that definitely goes to your internal developers. And there's 100% like you should have them. It's impossible to think that a customer is only going to choose 100% build or 100% buy. It will always be a mix. Put them to good use for you. Everything else, like routing your HR tickets or analyzing your marketing campaigns or making sure production levels in the warehouse are in great levels, you can probably work on that with an external party.
Anything that you've seen recently that kind of changed the dynamics, build versus buy? Like there was a big MIT report that said that partner or buy is twice as successful as the build in-house option, right?
In many times where we really see it break is when the maintenance over time isn't taken in consideration. Even if you have an internal development team, often in large enterprise, you still need to pay for it. It's a budget number that's like being pushed from one department to another. It's internal paying, but you still pay for it, right? What you don't really consider is after something has launched, you had the best in breed at that moment, maybe. But then the next day, that internal team moves to another project. They're on something else. What if your integration breaks? What if you need features? AI is moving extremely fast. So you need to make sure new models come out. Your AI stack is tested on new models that you want to integrate. Or I don't know, like a few month ago, a year ago, whatever, RAG was everything that everyone was talking about. Then MCPs came and so on. Like you want to be at the cutting edge of what's going on there. And that's often completely forgotten about. And all of a sudden, your people will move on to the next thing because it's not really the cutting edge of AI stack anymore.
Let's talk a bit about the AI strategy conversation. You already alluded to that. If a CEO tells you, we want to become an AI company, how do you react? What's like the honest conversation that usually follows?
Interesting. I haven't had it where they told us that directly, but always happy for a challenge. Usually, I try to, no matter what the initial conversation or the approach is, I try to get them to quick wins. Because if you're trying to move everything in your business all at once on the same day, you will have problems that there's some people that are probably very skeptic. You need to, in software, take your people along for the ride as well. They need to be adopting it. Otherwise, you don't need the software, right? So it's like, I think the quick wins where you can show ROI extremely quickly and also not have them kind of get into full panic mode that they're losing all of their jobs. Like that is also a part of AI where, what happens to my job down the line when we're talking about internal efficiencies and reducing like manual labor. You want them with you, not against you. From that moment on, it's extremely easy to find new use cases, to expand on existing use cases, and just continue going. But I wouldn't do it all at once from the first day.
When you chat with enterprise teams about AI, what's usually the one question that they should ask you, but they never do?
They asked so many questions. I would say what probably like people asked and are asking a lot less, to be honest, right now. So it's gone down significantly. Is probably security aspect. And I'm not saying that they should ask me that more often. We have a very solid, we come from a cybersecurity background, so we're very solid on that. We can do full on-prem hosting. But for me, what that shows me is initially people were trying to find blockers with AI and were like, is this scary? Is this not scary? Can I really do this? now 12 months, 16 months later, something like that, that question comes so much less. So I feel like people are really feeling the pressure, and that's why they're asking fewer questions. I think that traditional like AI governance review is like it happens at the start. And as soon as there's like the first check off, it's like go, go, go. And the pressure is so much that the speed has just increased significantly.
That's a good observation. Let's chat about Unframe. Imagine we are sitting at the dinner table with friends and family. And you talk about your job. What do you tell them what you do at Unframe?
Yeah. Honestly, the very easiest metaphor that we came up with for our platform is actually a box of Legos. So think about the most challenging, the most time consuming, the most difficult problems that an enterprise faces when they're building AI. We have basically broken them down into little building blocks that you compare to a Lego brick. And now every time we meet a new customer and they have an AI use case, we will open our Lego box, we'll take the bricks, and those can be all kinds of bricks. They can be from like really heavy AI correlation engines to integrations to UI components to natural language querying and abstraction of unstructured data. So really like heavy mix of different types of blocks. And we take these blocks, put them together, and are able to build custom AI software for you in a SaaS model in a matter of a couple of days. Like within a week, you will have your solution from Unframe. And yeah, like the Lego analogy usually works pretty well for people to visualize what we do. And as we've been growing the company for the last couple of years, the Lego box gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're doing more really, really cool AI use cases for all kinds of customers around the world.
Excellent. Can you help us understand a bit better how Unframe is different versus the other Lego box or full stack providers, the point solutions, or even the foundational model providers, right? Everybody's deploying forward deployed engineers these days. Where does Unframe come into play, and what are the use cases or types of engagements where Unframe really shines?
Yeah, makes sense. I always say, are somewhat lucky because timing worked out really, really well for us, where we built our platform when we already knew about the LLM and the AI era. So that's really been helping. And that's why we actually do not need a forward deployed engineer working with us, because we actually have this platform that is hyper tailored that we can use very, very quickly to achieve extreme accuracy. Forward deployed engineer is a one way of doing it, but for many companies that's actually very heavy. Like really onboarding someone to your systems, going through that whole process, having them embedded with you for month at end, and the price tag that comes with you. That's not something that is achievable or wanted by everyone for the large amount of their use cases. Point solutions are popping up right and left and center all the time, and it's really great to see the speed of which things are moving. And sometimes that can be very competitive to us. Let's say it like that. If that use case that a customer has is exactly on the point of exactly what that point solution can offer, that might be a direct competitor. That being said, if we are looking at how we work with CIOs and business leaders that have a large majority or like a very large list of use cases, in many cases in the Fortune 5, in the hundreds, if not thousands of use cases that they have in the backlog, it will be extremely hard for them to run their RFPs and multiple POCs and vendor comparisons for all of these use cases, because they will not get their use case list achieved or their strategy goals achieved for another few years. And many of them have bonuses now tied to the AI strategy resolution or like making big advances there. And so they really need to act quickly. And that's where a platform like ours that has like a shared layer that it operates on is really helpful in getting through it quickly and having not a completely disconnected stack of point solutions that don't talk to each other. The advantages as well that you'll start with a use case in finance and then you move to one in sales and one in production planning, and all of those are talking to each other, and the shared layer really gives you that AI representation of your whole business and all of the knowledge that is shared between them.
Got it. Let's make that practical. What's your favorite customer story where you took the AI project from a demo to the customer saying, we can't imagine working without this anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the largest newspapers in the German-speaking world, oldest newspaper in the world, and it is really interesting. We met them and very quickly found a use case, which is all around editorial bottlenecks that they had in their team. It was not necessarily an AI project initially, but when they met us, they were like, this could be an interesting one. And we were able to provide them a solution to test for the whole editorial team within a matter of a week and a half, something like that. They tested and they loved it because the metrics that they currently had was for a new proofreader to be onboarded to their systems took them about 2 to 3 years to actually get completely trained and ramped and be able to work through the whole process themselves. We were able to down that to almost instant onboarding, as well as cut the proofreading time by many percent. So really it's so much faster now, which allows them to actually proofread a lot more articles when in the past they could only get to all of the print media articles. Now they can also proofread everything that's on the web or in the app. So it was an extremely fast process, great engagement with the customer, a really receptive team, which honestly for me initially when the team told me, hey, we're meeting with a media company, I was like, but media and AI, does that actually go together? You have all the Hollywood walkouts and everything that happens. Everyone's scared of what does my media job do to me? And with AI, none of that really happened there down the line. It was really working hand in hand with the customer. And that's what I love most, And then within a matter of very short time, there was additional use cases that came up because people tested it. They liked working with our model. They liked kind of seeing how it works and had a lot of inspiration for additional use cases. And that's what we've been working on now for the last few months. And it's been a great experience.
Amazing. When you work with customers that closely, is the AI system that you implement, is that their IP, or can you productize that to all the other media houses of this world?
No, neither one of the two. So the actual solution that the customer has will only ever be for them. So it's completely customized, tailored to them. And so we do that with something that we call a blueprint. So you think about the blueprint as like the little Lego instructions manual that you have in each of the blocks that basically defines where each component goes, how that works together, how they talk to each other, and so on. That's only ever for one customer, will never be shared with the competitors or anyone else. The underlying building blocks, though, they are the platform's IP. So they are our IP. And if you think about it, we have building blocks that are data abstraction, that are integrations, that are dashboarding capabilities. So obviously those ones we cannot pass as an IP to the customer, but all the data within it obviously stays within them and will always remain their IP.
The industry that you're operating in is super packed, very competitive. What are misconceptions that occur frequently that business clients have when they first approach you? And what do you say to clarify?
I think at the start, a lot of people were like, oh, but in order for AI to work, we need to train our own model. So we need to get some people, they train the model, they fine tune it, do all that work. Thankfully, that's not the case. You do not need to go down that route. And I would probably always recommend you not to go down that route because they are all of the giants, like you said before. They've been spending probably a lot more millions and billions on doing exactly that job for you so that you don't have to. It's just a matter of how you use the models and how you get the best value out of them for you, which is totally possible with today's tech stack. Like you referenced the MIT report earlier. It's not a technology problem, right? It's purely how we tailor it and operate it for your use case and your tech stack.
I want to talk about outcome-based pricing. You offer that as one of the first players in Europe alongside a classical license playbook. What was the core frustration or insight that pushed you to take that risk?
So the very first thing I knew from day one was I do not want us to have a seat-based or license-based pricing model because what most companies want to start using AI for is for internal inefficiencies and operational excellence, if you will. If then every single time you have to decide, do I want to give this team or this person a license, or is it too expensive? Does it make sense? The whole point is kind of really not there anymore, right? And you see that a lot with when you talk to people oh, we're doing enterprise search for AI, but only 25% of the team have it because otherwise it gets too expensive. Or we're using this tool and we pay by token or by query, and well, if too many people ask, it kind of exceeds budget. It's that's not the point of what we're trying to solve here, right? So we kind of wanted to see it from a different angle. And we're okay, this is the specific use case that the company is approaching us for, and they actually have it mapped as a priority. It has a budget attached to it. So let's kind of give a very competitive price where the customer feels like this is actually the ROI, they're getting good value for money. We do t-shirt-based pricing, basically on the use case, depending on the expected ROI and the complexity. There's many different angles of how we can slice and dice this together with the customer, but it needs to be predictable. That's the most important thing. It needs to be predictable, and they need to feel like they're getting good output from it, because as a platform like us, we do not just want to work with you on one use case, right? You have many more, and our platform and your experience with it gets a lot better the more use cases you do with us. So that's why we're really after, like, let's not overcharge you compared to a point solution, right? They only have one product to sell to you. So probably try to maximize on your dollars. So there's nothing else that they can offer. But we do have a lot more to offer, and we want to make sure you come back for more.
What kind of internal debates did you have when you first discussed tying your revenue to client results, and how did you win over the skeptics?
Not too many, I would say. Internally, I think what the biggest discussions were was like, how do we actually measure that? And is there something that we can do, like as a once, like we define the pricing once and then we can rinse and repeat that with every customer? And we learned pretty quickly, because we can do so many use cases, it's not always the same. Sometimes the metric is response time to a customer. Sometimes the metrics is reducing X amount of human errors, or sometimes it is increasing revenue by X or reducing license cost by X. Like, those are very different metrics that we can all work towards. And so it really at this stage still needs to be like a case by case pricing discussion. We always we put it on paper. It's not like it just happens in the back room and we just like ballpark it. It is really something we discuss. And before kicking off a POC, it's something the customer gets to see and discusses with our commercial team. And we really put metrics around it. It also helps the customer, especially when they're newer to AI, to think about how do they evaluate us, because sometimes it's been really hard for them to like actually think, well, if you have a search use case, we found the document. So now what does that mean? How do you evaluate if it was the right document or if it was like the right type of output that you were expecting? It's important to have that conversation openly. And that's helped us a lot move from the ad hoc type of pricing discussion to a really structured one.
Got it. And I like it as a concept, but I also see the messy reality. For me, conceptually, this is like the unit of value that I want to optimize for, right? I don't care about how many tokens we spend or how many credits we consume. I want to know how many positive outcomes or wins did that tool or that service produce for me, right? So conceptually, I love it. It just has to stand the test of time, right? In terms of how does it work in practice? Now asking you, what needs to be true inside an enterprise? Think about like data, maturity, analytics, culture for outcome-based pricing to actually work and not turn into endless disputes.
So first of all, I think the data maturity, it's a bit of a hoax. It did make sense when we were still doing like manual data tagging and all of that back in the days. AI can do so much. In most cases, we say, if a human can operate something nowadays, so can AI. You just need to tell it what it needs to do. So it's always like when people tell me, oh, before I can do AI, I need like at least 12 to 18 months of cleaning my data and tagging it. Absolutely, you do not. You just need the right partner to work on like the real thing with you. So that's on a side note. I think if a use case is mapped, there is some thought on the customer side already. We're getting a lot less of like the on the whim, oh, you guys can do any use case. Let me just think what's priority and like name something. At this stage, I really feel enterprises have moved away from the pure let's experiment to like, this is the top 5, the top 10, the top 200 use cases. And they know very clearly what's happening there now. That's a shift I've observed strongly from last year to this year. As I said before, the actual metrics can be different. Sometimes it already helps to confirm a general idea of like, let's say customer response time improves between 37 to 45%, then we feel like it's good ROI for us. And then we're happy with this specific license price. That's something we can work around. But it needs to be use case by use case basis or within the bucket that we're operating in. We have like 3 major buckets that we operate. So the first one is everything that we call observability and reporting. So think about all your BI, analytics, and search use cases. Disparate systems that don't talk to each other, we are like the intelligence layer on top of it. The second one is abstraction extraction. So that's all your unstructured data, where we work with financial statements and contracts and emails and board slides and Excels and all of that. So there you have a very clear metric on, which is usually a lot of human work and data quality work, in the sense of turning unstructured data into something that's actually usable and you get insights of. So again, it's very different, but much easier actually to measure the accuracy rate, the human workload that is eliminated or reduced. It's very different to measure that one. And then there's all of the agentic workflows and the automation efforts, so anything that's around decision making and actions, where you measure very different things as well. So like that's where you have like your speed of responses, where you have your automation of human workflows. So you once again need to think about all of these a little bit in their own area and see if it is an internal use case, if it is an external use case. So are you trying to impact the bottom line or the top line? So there's a lot of metrics, but thankfully now that we have done this for a few years, the team has gotten very strong and we have a good set of metrics. Either the customer brings their own that they have already defined and that they have cleared, like in the RFP, for example, they know very well what they want to achieve. Sometimes they don't. And then we're acting a little bit of like a consulting arm to them and like, here are the options. This is what we're usually seeing in the market. And we find a good middle ground across all of them.
Got it. Let's take one concrete example. I think everybody is familiar with internal chatbots, right? So I want to do that with Unframe. Now, how do you price an outcome? The question got answered satisfactorily by the chatbot. And how do you price that outcome now for your client? How does that work? And like, what are your considerations?
Yeah. So, for example, we were working with a very large global enterprise in the consumer goods market, I guess we could say. They have offices in probably over 40 countries, something like that. It was in chatbot enterprise search is kind of the nice way of saying chatbot, like that,
Yes.
for their HR and internal employee services. And so a lot of the use cases that they had were around like people are constantly opening tickets for our HR team to ask questions about maternity leave, or where do they put their sick note, or how can they get a new parking badge to enter the parking lot, things like that. That took a lot of human times, right? So what they did is like measure the reduction of those internal use cases or internal tickets that were reduced because they could just self-serve a lot with AI. And you can very easily see the amount of queries that are being done. We have a lot of features if the customer wants to activate them, like is it positive, is it a negative response, is there follow-up question? So are you getting what you're needing on a first hit, or do you need to ask and re-ask 5 or 6 or 7 more times? Those types of metrics you can take into consideration. Technically, if everything goes well, very, very quickly, you should see that amount of manually created tickets go down drastically and response time to be a lot faster. As well as in some companies, we have seen that their pulse survey for employee happiness has gone up because they were able to actually measure that access to resources and knowledge sharing has improved, which had an impact on employee satisfaction. As you can see, it's not just one response. There's always a few different metrics that you can take into consideration for those.
Got it. And how do you prevent situations where the product works, but the customer's organization isn't ready to use it? No change management, no adoption. So you have all the risk on your side.
That happens, but it's never happened because of pricing. Let's say it like that. It happens a lot because we make it very, very easy to work with us because we specifically do not charge for a POC. A good example, you go and want to buy a sofa, right? A custom-made tailored sofa, especially to your size and your colors. There's not a single sofa builder in the world that would say, okay, I'll build it for you. You can try it. If you like it, we'll move to payment after, right? They will always ask you half of it up front or all of it up front, and you sign the contract. We don't operate like that, right? So it is very easy sometimes for people to just use us as let's brainstorm. How can we move our AI strategy forward and actually try to practice, see what comes out of it. So we provide them with a solution. They were never a real buyer in the first place, but most of the time they won't move to licensing then because they still need in enterprise levels, like even if something is cheap in a solution, let's say like that, not that we're cheap, but if it was, they wouldn't get approval from procurement. You can't just sign. Like, it's not like you say, Unframe should build me X. I won't use it as much, so it won't be huge price tag. You still can't sign it. You're not signatory of the company. So there needs to be a process. That's very important. And look, ultimately, you want something that provides value. And as soon as in a company that is of value, there's all eyes on it. And it's not just a single person's decision. So very fortunately, we've not had those issues.
Okay. Has outcome-based pricing also changed how your team builds and ships features for the clients?
I would say it's more of like a communication topic more so than anything. We're lucky with our modular approach that every customer of ours has their own roadmap. It has their own shipment schedule and so on. So it's a good vehicle, but it doesn't limit or hinder anything. Like we're very, very, very fast compared to a traditional SaaS or a point solution because we can make changes for a customer, even if they are a one solution kind of feature because of our building blocks. If you're comparing that traditional SaaS, you probably need a critical mass of this many feature request tickets before it makes sense to change something. We don't have that. Outcome-based pricing, if at all, helps us to accelerate that because we obviously want to make sure that there is the highest adoption, not to maximize on the one use case, but we really want to work with customers on multiple use cases. And for us, it's always the best is when the customer tells us like we are their strategic partner for their AI strategy. That's what we want to achieve. And we will all hands on deck for that.
And now, if someone is excited about the topic as well and wants to experiment with outcome-based pricing, what would be your honest advice? Where should they start? What are the landmines they should expect?
So as a customer, I would say try it. It's great. Like it really makes you also think about what you want to achieve ahead of time and keeps you focused on that. If you are talking about another startup, like maybe don't go that route because it's really hard to do. And that's why most people don't do it, I think for us, it's absolutely the right way of doing it. And we're not planning on changing that anytime soon whatsoever. Like it's the right thing for us to do, but it's extremely hard to execute because you need like perfect execution in every part of your business and every part of the sales cycle and your organizations. It's try, but maybe there's an easier route to do.
Looking at your current project portfolio, how many of the projects that you have actively deployed, how many of these are pure outcome-based pricing and like where's a mix with licensing and integrations deployed?
I would say it's every single one has a component of outcome based in it. That's definitely the case. We never have anything which is purely just like user licenses or something like that. There's always an outcome component. Honestly, yeah, all of them have a component to it. Yeah, 100%.
Interesting. So it's essentially a good mix of different models that are applied, right?
And I mean, some of the times outcome based could also be an aspect of we have this many contracts that we want to abstract, and the metrics is not tied to the business outcome, but rather to the actual activity of getting something that's completely been manual and physical into the digital world that can be worked on. So it always has that metrics as part of our pricing, and the customer sees it black and white on a piece of paper before we ever engage into any POC. It's very like nothing is hidden. There's no like gotchas after the fact. It's in your face, very, very clear what you're going to be ending up with.
Got it. You say it's going to be hard to copy like all your learnings over the past couple of years around outcome-based pricing. Do you see it as a competitive moat for Unframe, or do you actually want your competitors to copy so the whole market in enterprise shifts?
It's definitely a competitive mode for us right now. Like customers tell us all the time that they love our pricing model because it's predictable. They know what they're going to get into. It's very important for them, and it makes up part of our success. I'm not against others trying. Some have tried before, but ended up always having to make a shift. Like we hear it from customers a lot that they in some stage entered into like a platform cost or like an upfront cost plus the usage plus the outcome-based aspect to it. So we see people experimenting with it, but actually perfecting the execution of it is still pretty hard right now.
Let's look a bit into the future. We are in 2028, 2 years from now. How do you think pricing for AI will evolve? Will it be more like utilities, so usage-based? Will it go back to seat-based, or will it be more performance-based contracting like the outcome-based pricing model? Or something completely new that we cannot even think about right now?
That's a great fourth option. I always keep that one open too, because what do we
Let's
know
keep
with
that
AI
open.
right now? Sometimes things are moving so fast, right? We always say it's the first inning right now, and we haven't even seen anywhere close to the tip of the iceberg. So that there's still a lot to come. I think for pure operational purposes and just habit, a lot of people will stay with the seed or the license model for now. I think it's just easiest to operate on. So I think that will happen. It doesn't make sense for the large language models to move from anything than tokens right now. So I think it will still be a mix. In the customer's sake, I hope that we stop with these things where you have a platform fee and then a user fee and then also a token fee, because then it just gets impossible. And our customers, especially large enterprise, tell us all the time it's extremely hard for them to put a number in front of their CFO because there's just way too many variables and different types of components in the mix.
How do you think procurement and buying processes will evolve? If you could redesign how enterprise evaluate and buy AI vendors from scratch, how would that process look like for you?
I've seen it all by now, I think, from the 16-month AI policy process of drafting what it looks like to buy AI solutions to the governance boards that we see popping up everywhere. And honestly, I would say the most redlined paragraph in every single one of our NDAs is where it tells us that we cannot use AI. And we're always like, well, but we are an AI company. So I think there just needs to be a bit of like openness and just like thinking ahead with that. Like you can put guardrails around anything, but if you really want to move at the speed that your CIO and your CEO want you, like you need to have some openness to the topic of AI also in procurement. And it's starting to be a lot more. Hopefully with the first few purchases behind most of the enterprises at this stage, it gets easier. The frameworks are there in most cases. It's not the very first AI like purchase anymore. So it gets better. Times are getting faster again. And I hope that just moves to ROI in a faster pace.
What's one bold prediction about AI and the future of work that you believe is true, but you rarely say out loud because you think it sounds too bold?
The quick DIY is completely going to die out. It doesn't work on an enterprise level. It's nice to playing around with it, but it won't replace your ERP. It won't replace your CRM. It's not what is going to move AI strategy forward. Just citizen development is not going to solve your AI strategy, even with all the buzz on LinkedIn.
Do you think AI will ultimately make organizations more human or machine-like?
I think more human, honestly, because I think it's a way more fun and interactive to engage with like natural language interfaces than copy pasting from an email or a fax into an SAP or Salesforce interface. So I think that helps with the human aspect. And we also see a lot of people connecting over it because they're actually proud when they are moving some of their really tedious work from a manual approach to an AI interface. They're really proud to show it to their colleagues. And that's how we get a lot of follow-up business actually, because it spreads like wildfire. It has this wow aspect to it and connects people again.
Excellent. My last question for everyone listening or watching, what's the single most important advice you would like to highlight from our conversation today?
I would say figure out before you start an AI project what you're trying to achieve for your business and how you measure it, because everything else is fun as a side project, as a little side hustle to like tinker around with the cool shiny tools there are. But if you want to move the needle for your business and show impact, you need to make sure that you are acting towards the actual pain point that you're seeing and are able to show value. So think about how you measure it.
Love it. Thank you so much, Larissa. This was so much fun. And how can people learn more about you and Unframe?
Happy to engage. Larissa at unframe.ai is my email. Obviously, we have a website. Check that out. But find me on LinkedIn or by email, and happy to continue the conversation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's it today from AI to Go. Bye-bye and auf Wiedersehen.
Yay.
AI to Go podcast.